This video is brought to you by the 3-Minute Board Game patrons. Keep us independent by supporting us on Patreon. Kia ora koutou, and welcome to this very special 3-Minute Board Games video, where I'm going to be running through all the spirits in Spirit Island and giving them a tier ranking. Now, a little bit about me and Spirit Island. I've played hundreds of games of Spirit Island, but I wouldn't consider myself a top tier player. I tend to play mid-complexity with the adversaries, and I'm certainly not crazy enough to play against level 6 of two of them at the same time. There are some people out there who do have that level of expertise with the game, and I recommend checking out Red Revenge's channel if you really want to have a deep dive into Spirit Island. That guy knows about 100 times more about this game than I do. That said, I don't consider myself a chump at Spirit Island, so I feel like this tier list is going to be slightly informed or somewhat informed, but maybe not to the top tier expert level play of some others out there. I'm going to tier rank these spirits on 3 criteria. The first is, how strong do I think they are? Are they an absolute kick-ass spirit that I think I can pick up and play and win against just about any adversary? The second one is my comfort level with the spirit. How well do I think I personally can get the best out of it? And the third tier is the spirit fun? Is it a great gameplay experience, and has playing it or having it on the table made my games better? So yeah, it's not just about, is the spirit a strong spirit? It's, is the spirit a great spirit that I enjoy playing, and do I feel like it adds a ton to the game? A quick note about aspects. I'm going to talk about some aspects, but I'm not going to rank each of them individually. That's a level of granularity in the game that I will leave to people who have played thousands of games rather than my mere humble hundreds. I also just don't want to play that many games with Shadows Flicker Like Flames, who has 6 different aspects. I feel like it's been like a couple of weeks just playing that one spirit to give a really informed opinion on them. Which would be really cool if Spirit Island was the only game I played, but it isn't. And of course, all of this is personal opinion, and my ranking of the spirits is never going to line up 100% with yours, and that's fine. Let's have a good, fun, robust discussion about it. No need to be a doo-doo head. And I'm going to rank the spirits in chronological order and then complexity order within each set. So we're going to start off with Spirit Island's low complexity spirits, and end up with the very high spirit from Nature Incarnate as the last spirit we look at. I've got the spirits stacked up in front of me, so I'll be doing a little bit of reading off them, and I will put that information up on the screen as well. So without further delay, let's get to the rankings. The first spirit we have is Lightning Swift Strike. Lightning has some really great growth options. I like that you get a power card and energy when you reclaim your cards, and I like that there's a double presence option here as well, and an option that gets you presence and lots of energy. Like, these are great growth options. Lightning also has some fantastic presence tracks, with a long power track that gets up to 5, but a short card plays track that goes up to 6, and that is a ton of card plays. I'm not sure, but I think Lightning might have the most card plays in the game. It's definitely a spirit you want to be out there throwing out lots of minor powers with. In no small part because your innate power has a really high set of thresholds, and if you want to be hitting these consistently, you're going to have to be playing lots and lots of cards. But Lightning's secret sauce is, of course, the special rule Swiftness of Lightning. For every purple you have, you can use 1 slow power as though it was fast. That is what defines Lightning Swift Strike. And I'm going to put Lightning in the C tier. Now, I think Lightning is an exceptional spirit for new players, in no small part because it allows them to sort of negate the slow phase. They can put everything into the fast phase and just go bam, 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 and get all their actions done early on. And learning the timing of how Spirit Island works with the fast phase, then the invaders acting, then the slow phase, that's one of the hardest things for new players to grok. So having them get to ignore it for their first game at least is a really good thing. So that's why Lightning's usually the spirit I give out to people when they are first playing the game. I do think it means it relies too much on that. I do enjoy playing Lightning myself, although I do prefer some of the aspects that it's got. And we'll talk about those just now. So I've played 2 of the aspects a fair bit, the first one of which is Pandemonium, and that replaces your Thundering Destruction ability with the ability to add strife and fear. And it is a lot of strife and a lot of fear. If you somehow manage to get this up to its top tier, which is not easy to do, but you can do it later in the game, you're adding 11 fear from 1 power. That is absolutely massive. Even adversaries with big fear decks are going to start worrying about you knocking off 11 fear each turn. And 4 strife, that can just shut down even the biggest region. This is I think a big step up for Lightning, and we'll probably put it in the B tier for me. The other aspect I've played quite a bit is Immense, And what Immense does is it swaps the presence tracks essentially around. So you get twice as much power from the top presence track, but you only get half as many card plays from the bottom. And you also get a few other little bells and whistles, but mostly it channels you from being a spirit throwing out 4, 5, 6 minor powers a turn into one that's chucking out 2 or 3 big powers a turn. And I don't necessarily think it's any better or stronger, but it is an interesting take, and it just changes the spirit enough to make it feel like you're playing a fresh spirit. So I think Immense is a really, really cool aspect and one I enjoy playing, but I don't necessarily think it makes it any tougher. So yeah, Lightning Swift Strike. Really strong spirit for being able to ignore the slow phase and just do everything fast. Can throw out a ton of minor powers and be a real aid and asset to everyone out there. But ultimately just doesn't have quite the sort of skill ceiling or power ceiling that some of the other characters do, or some of the other spirits do. Still absolutely reliable. Love playing Lightning Swift Strike. Next up, we have Vital Strength of the Earth. Vital Strength of the Earth is a slow-growing spirit. It gains 1 presence in each of its track, and those are pretty boring-looking growth options. It has some pretty okay growth tracks with 8 power up the top and up to 4 card plays. But that card play track, that comes real slow. Like mid-game, you're sitting there with two card plays, and you're just wanting to get to 3. With your slow growth, it just takes forever to get there. Your innate allows you to recast things, but you kind of need to have 2 or 3 plays already to get to these thresholds. Special rules: defend 3 any place that has a sacred site. That's pretty ordinary. Now, Vital Strength of the Earth, I'm putting him in the D tier. I'm tempted to put him in the F tier. I feel like Spirit Island's become a little bit of an arms race, and Vital Strength's been left behind somewhat. He's quite cool when you get him going, and he's throwing out 2 or 3 big powers a turn, but a lot of other people have to do some heavy lifting for you to get there first. He's one of those spirits that really helps if someone gives him a minor power or an ability that gets more presence off him, because he does ramp up quite well. But he's hampered by those very boring slow growth options. One of his signature cards, A Year of Perfect Stillness, does buy him a lot of time and is a very useful card. Of his aspects, the only one I've really played is Resilience, and that replaces the ability to defend 3 at sacred sites, with making sacred sites need to take 8 damage before you get to put a blight down. Now, this doesn't defend to harm, so it's not very good for organizing counterattacks, but it does stop those areas blighting and does help Vital Strength of the Earth hold the line a little bit better. I think it's a slight improvement, but certainly not enough to knock it up a tier. I think, yeah, Vital Strength of the Earth, he's a big, solid, lovable rocky boy, but I think the game has got faster and more brutal, and he's just a little bit outpaced, a little bit old school, and a little bit left behind in sort of the modern arms race that is Spirit Island. Next up, we have River, Surges, and Sunlight. River has some really great growth options. When you reclaim your cards, you're getting cool stuff. You've got a double presence placement, and you've got the ability to place a presence and gain a power card. And yet again, here we have tracks go up to 5 in power, but also go up to 5 in card plays with a reclaim 1 spot as well. Personally, I tend to build River, Surges, and Sunlight around using a lot of minor powers. Your innate ability, Massive Flooding, is pretty good at doing a little bit of pushing around and damage. And all your presence in Rivers count as sacred sites, which is a nice to have. River, Surges, and Sunlight is pretty damn good, actually. I'm going to put them up in the B tier. I think they're one of the first real control spirits. They're reasonably good at defending places, but they're great at just pushing things around and just getting things into positions to do damage later on. The first tier of their innate power and their card wash away allow them to push towns and explorers around, and River's bounty allows them to generate more Dahan. So one of the things with River is just pushing things around and hoping to pick up some defense cards so you can start growing up your little Dahan army and doing big counterattacks. I think River is the low complexity spirit in the starter box that has best kept pace with the game. The only one of River, Surges, and Sunlight aspects I've played is Sunshine, and I didn't really care for it. Losing that card at the start just felt awful. Starting with 3 cards is just... it's not a good feeling in this game. And I just felt behind the 8 ball. Having the extra power didn't feel like it was worth sacrificing a card for, especially a card that gives you energy and gives other people energy. Yeah, I didn't quite see the point of the Sunshine aspect, then I certainly won't be playing with it again. But River Surge like Sunlight, really solid control spirit, can ramp up and get quite strong later in the game. Like, it's got those great growth tracks and the ability to play a ton of cards and have the power to play them. It's just a bit of a noodler at the start of the game, but overall, rock solid spirit. Then we have Shadow Flickers Like Flame. A spirit that has 6 aspects because of how many times they've tried to fix the poor little guy. He has very ordinary growth tracks. His Reclaim doesn't give him anything much, and he's got 1 presence gain on the other tracks. The presence tracks are great. Like, if he can get going, Shadows Flicker Like Flame's fine. It's just starting off with 0 energy, 1 card play, and just it takes you so long to build up to 3 energy and 3 card plays, which is where he starts coming alive. That's kind of the game's getting close to being decided by that point, and I just think he's like 1 or 2 turns too slow to really be particularly useful. His innate power allows you to target any land and gather up explorers and generate flare, and then at the end of the track do a ton of damage and more fear. And his unique ability is you can pay 1 extra energy to target a land with Dahan regardless of a power's range. Which is okay if you had the energy to do it. Like, the fact that it costs energy is just one of those little... Did it need to cost energy? It probably doesn't. And you know where this is going. He's down in the F tier for Shadow Flickers Like Flame. It's the Flickers Like Flame territory tier. He's still not very good. I have played a bunch of his aspects, and I'm not sure any of them really help him too much. Oh no, wait, there is one that does. Anyway, there's 3 that I've played quite a bit. So the first one of his aspects that I have played is Madness, and that's when you add your presence during growth. You can also add a strife in that region. This is really good. I do like this. I think this makes him into a D tier character. It just gives you that little extra bit of control and survivability in the early game. There's the Reach one, which once per turn you may ignore range. Again, every way, shape or form, it's an improvement over the other ability that he's got. I can't think of any time in the game, except maybe towards the end when the game's pretty much decided anyway, that you would possibly want to spend 2 power to make 2 powers target Dahan at vast ranges. It's a very niche case. I'd say in almost every way, Reach is a step up. I still don't know if Reach would take Flickers Like Flame off the F tier. Yeah, probably not. And then there's Darkfire. Now, this is the one that I think might actually bump Shadows Flicker Like Flame up a couple of tiers. I've played this once or twice, really quite impressed. It allows you to treat Moon as Fire or Fire as Moon, and that allows you to do some funky stuff with major powers. Plus, you also generate a bonus Fire or Moon each turn. And the first time an action would destroy one of your presence, you may push that instead of destroying it. So it keeps him on the board. I think this might be pretty good, but I need to play it more to really judge it and see whether it lifts Flickers Like Flame off the bottom of the barrel. So yeah, Shadow Flickers Like Flame, I think the damage is done in its growth tracks. I think the growth and presence tracks, that's where it's at. It's just, it needs a kickstart. It needs like an extra 1 or 2 presence to get going. I want to like you, I want to like every spirit in this game, but sadly, someone has to be on the bottom tier. And in this case, it's Shadows Flicker Like Flame. Ooh, now we're up to some of my favorite spirits. And straight off, we're going to talk about Thunderspeaker. And I'm just going to put Thunderspeaker straight into the A tier and then tell you why. So we've got some great growth options here. The Reclaim card gives you a ton of power cards. You've then got a double presence adding track and a single presence gain lots of power track. And your tracks are kind of interesting. Your top one doesn't give you a ton of power, but it gives you a lot of elements. And the bottom one gives you a reasonable number of card plays and the ability to reclaim cards. Your innate powers allow you to move your Dahan around the board, and if you get enough purple symbols, you can do that in the fast phase, and then lead the Furious Assault. That allows you to do damage with your Dahan. Thunderspeaker's special rules allows her to move her presence around with Dahan as well. But Blight that kills Dahan does hurt you as well. Thunderspeaker's like a general. She's on the battlefield from turn 1, leading the Dahan around, messing stuff up, and I absolutely love her. I think she's a great spirit. Moving and striking with Dahan is a great way to keep the invaders in check and ultimately defeat them, and Manifestations of Power and Glory can potentially be one of the highest damaging cards in the game. You get enough of her presence, enough Dahan together, and you can flatten anything with this card. And because of her Reclaim 1 ability, you can use it every single turn if you wanted to. It's a great spirit to load up with minor powers and get her just rocking around the board, messing things up. Thunderspeaker is the spirit I have played the most. Normally because when I'm playing with new players, I'll pick Thunderspeaker to play, just so if there's something wrong on their board, I can rock over with my little army and I can help them out. That said, I've not actually played with either of her aspects because I've just never felt the need to. I really like how Thunderspeaker plays as is, and I've just never really wanted to tinker with her. I think she's super strong in the right scenarios, but because of her reliance on Dahan, she has a weakness. She has something that can be exploited by certain invaders and by events and other things. And if the Dahan count starts dropping on her board, she can end up in a bit of trouble. But yeah, absolutely A-tier spirit, a ton of fun to play, and just a little bit different to anything else. Alright, next up we have Spread of Rampant Green, the base player of Spirit Island. You'll always get to add one presence to a jungle or wetland, and then you get another growth option, which could be an extra presence. So straight away we've got a 2 presence option here. We've also got the ability to gain tons of cards, more energy, or more card plays. Now Spread of Rampant Green has some pretty ordinary tracks. The power track in particular takes you forever to get any power, but it does come with a couple of plant symbols. And the bottom track also takes a while to ramp up. Not great growth tracks if you were anyone other than Spread of Rampant Green. Because before we get into their innate powers and special rules, let's have a look at these 2 cards. One of these allows you to put down an extra presence for yourself, another one allows you to put down an extra presence for someone else. These are so good. These are 2 of the best cards in the game, just getting that extra presence down. Which is a big deal because Spread of Rampant Green's special abilities, wherever you've got a sacred site, you can spend one of your presence, you can destroy it, to stop a ravage or a build in one of those lands. And then its secondary ability, which when adding presence to the board via growth, you can optionally use your destroyed presence. This is huge because usually burning presence is a massive cost for people, but for you, it's an inconvenience. And with Overgrown Ignite, some turns you can put down up to 3 presence, which is just amazing. Your innate abilities are so-so. Creepers tear into mortar. That can destroy cities when you get it to a high enough level. And to do that, you're going to be wanting to play 3 cards a turn. And then it's got a defend ability, which just keeps you in the game. A Spread of Rampant Green, straight up, is S tier. Spread of Rampant Green makes everything better. They can hold the line on their own board and deal with their invaders, but they make every other spirit in the game just that bit better. And you look at spirits down the line on this list like Vital and Shadows Flicker Like Flames, their big weakness is not getting enough presence down to ramp themselves up. If Spread of Rampant Green is in the playing field, each of those spirits goes up a tier or 2, because Spread can just make everyone else that much better. Again, like Thunderspeaker, I've not bothered to play with Spread of Rampant Green's aspects because I think Spread is pretty damn good as it is. If anyone sits down on the table and they say, I want to play a Spread of Rampant Green, I say, good for you, I'm really glad you're part of the team. And I also like playing Spread just to help everyone out. Rampant Green is not a rock star spirit, it's the bassist. It's the person that holds the group together, makes everything better and just runs smoother. Fantastic spirit. Absolute top tier. Well, that's funny. The first 6 spirits, we got 1 in each tier. That was not by design. Moving on, we're going to go to Ocean's Hungry Grasp. Oceans has some really weird growth options. And it's all about putting your presence in the ocean, pushing it out, and gathering it back in. Oceans also has some terrible presence tracks. Very little power, and a ton of card plays. The reason you get very little power is you're supposed to be gaining power by drowning things. You're supposed to be pulling stuff into the oceans and drowning it, using your drowning ability to get additional energy. Ocean's other rules really just revolve around having presence in the ocean and being able to pull stuff into that ocean space which normally can't be used. Its innate powers, the first one is just a bucket load of fear, and the second one allows you to drown towns and cities in coastal areas. And coastal areas includes the ocean if you manage to pull stuff into them. I think Ocean's C tier. I know other people who are very good with Ocean. I am not one of them. There's something about the cadence of playing Ocean, the back and forth flow, that I just simply do not grok, do not understand, do not click with. So I'm actually a very ordinary player of Ocean's Hungry Grasp. I've seen people play this spirit much, much better than I can. And I take my hat off to them. They get something that I don't. But for me, this is about the tier that it lives. This is about the most I can get out of it. And Ocean is one of the most flavorful and colorful spirits. It's very, very unique playstyle and cadence and just overall feel of just being on the oceans and drawing stuff to you and destroying it. But for some reason, it's just how the growth pattern works, how your presence moves back and forth. I just have great difficulty figuring out exactly how I want to time my actions. So I always feel like if I'm playing Oceans, I'm letting the team down a little. So I had to go up playing the Oceans aspect, which is the deeps. And if anything, I felt incredibly overwhelmed by that experience. Like, there was just so much more happening. And because I'm not particularly good with the cadence of Ocean's Hungry Grasp to start with, it was a little overwhelming. I feel like if this all clicks, push Oceans up another tier, and maybe even push Oceans into the A tier. But for me, the whole spirit, just the timing of it, how it works, its limitations of being quite coastally oriented, I always end up playing the spirit, I feel, suboptimally, and I think it lives about the C tier for me. And yeah, last time I did this video, I also put it in the C tier, and people said, how dare! How dare! And I'm like, bro, like, if you are much better at Ocean's Hungry Grasp than me, that's cool. Practically everyone's better at the spirit than I am. This is just where the spirit lives for me. Next up, we have our Spooky Boy, the bringer of dreams and nightmares. There's kind of interesting growth options, but basically is only playing one presence a turn. You got some pretty amazing tracks here that allow you to do some big special powers. Having an any element marker is really good for doing mages, because you're going to be wanting to get the exact right combination of elements in order to get the below the line ability on some of those, and that's much easier to do when you have an any. Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares doesn't do damage. Every time they would kill something or destroy something, they do fear and push things instead. This makes them incredibly good against some invaders and really piss poor against others. Like, lots of fear is great, and the innate abilities all revolve around fear and looking at what the fear cards are coming up and generating more fear, and all your actions are generating fear. The cards you have are all about generating fear and pushing things around as well. Makes Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares a great fear spirit and a great control spirit, but not necessarily a great spirit overall, which is why I'm putting them in the C tier. There's a thing here where some invaders are just that much more resilient to Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares tricks. You'll have much deeper fear decks than you will at low difficulty, and the more that ratchets up, the harder it is for Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares to start getting into that tier 2, tier 3 fear deck where the fear cards really start making an impact, and its early game gets pretty rough. It does have potential to be a great major power slinger, but again, those major powers are not doing damage, they're just generating fear. So yeah, Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares, if you were playing against low difficulty, low complexity, shoots up quite a bit higher, and even A or S tier if you're playing at the default level. The higher your adversaries go, the worse Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares is. So for me, putting them mid tier. C, solid spirit, but does have very noticeable weaknesses. Alright, moving on to Branch and Claw, and we have Sharp Fangs behind the leaves. I really don't like Sharp Fangs growth options. The Reclaim cards one that costs an energy, it's tripped me up a number of times where I wanted to add presence, but I've run out of energy the turn before, so I've had to take one of the other two options and then reclaim my cards, and every time I do that, I get so angry with myself. Your growth tracks, the big things here are the Reclaim options and the getting the extra elements for animal and plant. A lot of what you do revolves around getting those plant and animal elements going for you, because this spirit is all about the beast tokens. So your presence can move with beasts, and you can replace one of your presence with a beast token. That presence will leave the game. Your innate powers allow you to move beasts around the board, but not into blighted lands, which is another thing that trips me up occasionally when playing Sharp Fangs. And then your Frenzied Assault allows you to do a bucket load of damage if you've managed to assemble enough beast tokens. Your power cards are all around fear and gathering and placing more beast tokens. And yeah, Sharp Fangs is the beast token boy, and I'm going to put them in the B tier, a little ahead of Sunlight. Sharp Fangs is so much fun to play. Very similar sort of feel to Thunderspeaker, and a lot of what I like about Thunderspeaker of being able to move around the board and mess things up. But beast tokens are a little trickier and a little bit more reliant on the event deck. And you have to work a lot harder to get more into play than you do with the Dahan, where most boards start with 6, and Thunderspeaker can go to other boards and start assembling an army from other people's stuff. When it goes well for you though, Sharp Fangs is really cool. Just moving this horde of critters around, just eating everyone. Lots of fun to play. I don't necessarily know if Sharp Fangs is a great spirit as the difficulty goes up. I feel they're one of those spirits that starts to get challenged at higher difficulty levels. And I haven't played them against Russia that much, but I feel that that's got to be a pretty awkward matchup. Like, they could either be really good there or really bad. I'm not entirely too sure, but I feel like that that is a make and break matchup for Sharp Fangs. As for their aspects, I haven't played any of these either. I kind of like Sharp Fangs as they are. They're cool, they've got some limitations, they work really well with a couple of other spirits, like if you've got Many Minds and Grinning Trickster in play who are also generating beast tokens, and you've got all these critters roaming around. It's a really good game. But yeah, you are really reliant on that one type of token, and some events can really mess you up or destroy these tokens when you really don't want them being destroyed. Absolutely a spirit for people who want to be active in the game as well. But yeah, solid B tier spirit. Next up we have Keeper of the Forbidden Wilds. Another spirit with 2 growth options, and there's the potential here if you have the energy to be able to put down 2 presence a turn. Keeper has amazing presence tracks. You almost immediately get to 2 card plays. It does take a little while to build up there, but your power track is ginormous, and at least 1 or 2 spirits were more than 9 on their power track, but it's an impressive one. This Keeper is definitely a major spirit power that loves throwing out big, bad, scary powers at people. Their innate ability is to do a bucket load of damage to the lands that they're currently occupying, and then to push explorers out of lands that they're currently in as well. Their special rule is every time they create a sacred site, they push all Dahan from their land, and Dahan never moves to your sacred sites. So Keeper's actually pretty bad at doing Dahan-based counterattacks. That all said, Keeper goes straight to the top of the A tier because I think Keeper is absolutely awesome. I love this little hold the line style and then build up to being this massive, thrown out, huge major powers spirit. To me, Keepers what Vital Strength to the Earth aspires to be. It's just takes that same sort of play style of holding the line until you're this big, bad, major power throwing monster and you're just rampaging and smashing the hell out of everyone. Their starting cards are really good as well. They've got the ability to give another spirit a power. They've got an innate way to remove blight from a land. And Towering Wrath, when you get this going, if you build up a successful network of sacred sites and corral your opponents into one city and just start hitting it with Towering Wrath, it can do a ton of damage. And it's also really satisfying to pull off. It's not particularly friendly to Dahan in that area, but that's one of the cool weaknesses of Keeper, is they kind of suck with the Dahan. They're very strong at practically everything else. But that sort of traditional boost your defense, bring in the Dahan, kill the invaders that way strategy doesn't really work with Keeper. That said, 9 energy and major powers go a long way to dealing with that weakness. Yeah, Keeper's great. Next we have Serpent Slumbering beneath the island. Your growth options are pretty slow, but you do have the ability to move presence, which is quite interesting. It's an unusual presence track, as the start of the presence track's very, very crap, but then once you get over the threshold, you start getting into insane levels of power and ability. In order to advance on those tracks though, you need to have taken presence from other spirits. So Spirit Slumbering beneath the island is a bit of a parasite. They take presence of other players. Their innate powers, one of them allows them to gain extra energy, and absorbed spirits also gain extra energy, but the big one here is a second ability that allows them to add an extra presence. You really want to be hitting that as soon as you can, in order to start bringing down 2 presence to get those tracks cleared. The other ability does some damage and generates fear, but you might as well ignore the bottom right ability. If you're ever using that, the game's practically won anyway. Serpent Slumbering beneath the island really boils down to 2 powers. Absorb Essence, the ability to gain energy, and then it absorbs someone else's presence onto your Deep Slumber track, and then Elemental Aegis, the strongest defensive card in the game. This one defends 2 in target land and all adjacent lands, and for every presence on your Deep Slumber track, you defend 1 in target land and all adjacent lands. If you target this well, you can hit like 3 lands at a time that are going to ravage, and you can defend each of them for 4, 5, or 6. Plus, if you've got to the reclaim spot on the presence track, you can do that every turn. I'm conflicted about Serpent. I'm going to put them in the B tier. I think they are stronger than this as a spirit. I think they are an A, maybe S tier spirit in terms of power, because Elemental Aegis is incredibly strong. Once they get to their ability to be able to dump down their 2 presence, they can ramp up pretty quick. And then, in the end game, they've got so much power, so many card plays, they can just throw out anything. And yeah, Elemental Aegis keeps them safe for a very, very long time. But they're kind of boring. I feel like every time I play Serpent Slumbering beneath the island, I'm playing the same way each time. And yeah, I just don't think they're necessarily the most interesting spirit to play. They're strong, they're definitely powerful, they're definitely game changers, but they're a little bit boring. And yeah, just spamming Elemental Aegis, you have to do it because it's so damn good. I wanted Serpent to be more of a late bloomer and I just feel that they're a little too good early game. I feel they need to be sort of weaker, even weaker in the early game than they currently are to make up for that, because Elemental Aegis is just that damn good. B tier, probably A tier in terms of power, but C to D tier in terms of fun. Next up we have Heart of the Wildfire, who has some pretty basic growth options. The interesting one here is the one that allows you to get a lot of energy for each of the fire elements you have showing on your presence tracks. And you get up to 4 fire on your presence tracks. Now, the tricky thing is, when you're picking these presence tracks, they work with your special rules. So every time you add presence, it does 1 damage per one of these fire that are showing on your tracks. Now, this does damage to everything. So if you're adding 2 damage into a territory, you're doing 2 to the invaders, but you're doing 2 to the land as well, which is blighting the land. That can add blight, and it can also cascade blight. Thankfully, your own presence is not destroyed by your own blighting influence. Your innate powers, well, the first one allows you to do damage because of all the fire you're generating. The more green and fire you have, the more damage you're doing. And the second ability is the one that you really need to work towards, and that is the ability to remove some of this blight. So yeah, Heart of the Wildfire. Incredibly offensive spirit that roams around blowing things up with its fire, and I'm putting them in the bottom of the F tier. I am terrible with Heart of the Wildfire. This is a spirit I want to like a lot more than I actually play. This is the most times I have lost have been with Heart of the Wildfire. Like, I do not have a winning record with this spirit. I blow things up, and yeah, and then I lose the game. Like, it's just roaming around using your presence. Oh, cool! I've stopped the build there because I did 2 damage. I've still blighted the land, and we're running out of blight tokens. I want to be better with Heart of the Wildfire. I think they're super fun, but I think they run so close to the ragged edge when you've got... In big games, they're probably better because you have a bigger blight pool to deal with, but if you're playing with like 1, 2, 3, or 4, even 4 spirits, yeah, you can kind of eat through your allocated blight amount and blight the island really, really quickly. And it's just not that great at recovering. Plus, every time I trip up on the firestorm and needing to target a blighted land. So I'll be wanting to sort of move into somewhere and go, aha! I'm here to deal with this, and then go, oh shit, there's no blight here because I just tidied it up last turn. Yeah, so tricky one to pilot. Heart of the Wildfire's cards are also not particularly great. Flash fires and asphyxiating smoke, they're not quite good enough for the 2 energy, especially as you're not like an incredibly energy rich spirit to start with. Threatening Flames is fine, and Flame's Fury is fine, but yeah, overall I just think Heart of the Wildfire has high risk but not necessarily high reward. I feel if they were a little bit better at doing more damage, like they do reasonable damage, they're pretty offensive spirit, but I just think there are other spirits that do the aggressive thing a lot better and don't come with the downside. So yeah, F tier. I absolutely effing suck with Heart of the Wildfire. So yeah, F tier for flaming, not very good. Now we're going to start off with Shifting Memory of Ages. Now, Shifting Memory has some interesting growth options. It's a bit of a slow grower, but it does have this fascinating gain 9 energy growth option at the far right. Its growth tracks really indicate that this is a spirit all about major powers. The top track is where it's all at. Lots of power in these elemental markers, and the ability to reclaim a card, which is obviously going to be a major power. Your bottom track's pretty short, and for the most part, you'll probably get to 2 card plays and maybe stay there for most of the game. Its special rules is it forgets a power card from its hand, you can instead discard it. So that encourages you to go after major powers. And you're allowed to prepare elemental markers. So these little markers that can be used to meet the thresholds on various powers, and especially the below the line abilities on major powers. Its innate abilities are a defend power, and a power that allows you to generate more of these elemental markers. Its starting cards are all about those elemental markers and getting yourself extra powers. And Shifting Memory of Ages really does start with a small toolbox. Now, straight up, Shifting Memory of Ages, I'm going to put them in probably the D tier, maybe a little bit above Vital Strength. Maybe the bottom of the C tier, but I'm going to put them down here just because they are such a one-trick pony. It all comes down to what major powers you pull. If you get lucky, you get a good combination of major powers. They can be really good, but they're just so fragile. If you draw something that's just not a great power in that first major power draw, you're a very hamstrung character. Now, I was really high on them when they first came out because I love slinging major powers around, or I used to be very big on the get the big powers and throw them around. I've now, as I've played more of Spirit Island and I feel I've matured as a player, I'm a lot more enamored with the idea of getting 5 minor powers and chucking down things that cost 0 and 1 cost just to get up those elemental markers and to use all of your innates. And Shifting Memory of Ages doesn't do that very well. They are very reliant on 1 or 2 big cards they can play each turn, and then getting to the point where they can reclaim that card and just keep hammering away with it. Now, I haven't played the mental aspect, but I have played Intensify, and Intensify is really cool. What Intensify does is allows you to spend elemental markers to customize how your powers work. It makes it more difficult to get to some of those major power thresholds with Intensify, but it makes Shifting Memory of Ages into more of a toolkit spirit. And with this aspect, I feel more of a desire to go down the lower track and get to the 3 card plays and start checking out cards and modifying them with this extra ability. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I absolutely loved Shifting Memory of Ages. My opinion of them has dropped quite a bit over the last couple of years. They're still okay, they're not terrible, they're just absolutely dependent on that one cool trick. Mini Minds Movers 1, who is a fantastic spirit, both in terms of how powerful and how fun they are to play, but just as a cool idea and design concept. They have fantastic growth options, including a double growth option and an option where they get to place beast and grow at the same time. Presence tracks are pretty straightforward. The top one, you got some steady growth and some elements, and the bottom one has quite a lot of card plays, and this really interesting ability down here to pay energy to gain a power card. Now, you're not going to be drowning in energy because of how the spirit's designed, but you are going to want to get a lot of card plays and get a lot of low-cost powers. Their special rules is when they gather or push beasts, they can do this from lands up to 2 distant than normal. That's massive. That means they can be almost on the other side of the board. The sacred sites also count as animals, and you can turn this on and off if you want. So when it's advantageous for you to have those extra beasts there, you turn it on. And if you're going to lose presence because of it, you turn it off. Their innate powers involve gathering up animals and pushing and moving them around, and then a power that, based on the number of animals in the land and the amount of elements you've got, generates fear and defense. They get 5 starter cards, which is really cool, and almost all of them revolve around the animal tokens. Probably the most important card is a Dreadful Tide of Scurrying Flesh. With all of the beast tokens you're building up and contributing to the board, you got to remove some of those in order to slow the invader down and generate a bucket load of fear. And that's what Mini Minds does so well, generate buckets and buckets of fear. I am going to put them up in the A tier. I think they're a really strong fear spirit. I think they're a much better fear spirit than Bringer of Dreams and Nightmares. They just have this ability to move their forces around the board so quickly and so dramatically, and then lock down a place that needs to be defended, and while it's being defended, just pummel in the fear there as well. You add in some abilities that do some damage and extra effects with beast tokens, and they can start really ripping the invaders to shreds, as well as building that fear score up. Like Sharp Fangs, they are vulnerable to effects that hurt beasts in the event deck, but somehow I feel Mini Minds is a little bit more cushioned from that. And it's probably because they've got a growth option that allows them to place presence and a beast back on the board, as well as other cards that allow them to get more beasts. Whereas Sharp Fangs is losing some of its presence to get extra beasts. Mini Minds is a very mobile, highly defensive spirit and a real joy to play. It's got this great puzzle where you're trying to move all of your beasts all around the board and get them into that optimal placement, and it feels so satisfying when you get it right. I also think they're very good against most of the invaders. Come to the middle of the island, we have candy. It's Lure of the Deep Wilderness. Lure has some interesting growth options where you get to pick one to either reclaim your cards or gain a presence, and then the other one is gaining a power card or gaining a bunch of elements and some energy. Elements, power, and extra cards. You can go up to 5/5, which is really, really good. Allows you to either go for major powers or minor powers. The special rules now: Lure of the Deep Wilderness can only place on inland spots. Can't go on the coast. It's the opposite of Ocean's Hungry Grasp. And for each of your presence in a region, you can ignore 2 invaders when they ravage. Now, their innate abilities. The first one allows you to replace pieces with explorers, and then gather all those explorers. It's fascinating because you don't actually destroy the invaders here. You just turn them into a giant pile of explorers. Your second power, Never Heard From Again, allows you to add badlands in and then do damage based on the number of badlands, beasts, disease, and wilds tokens in here. And this generates fear. So, your gameplay loop is as follows. You sit in the middle of the island, you lure everyone into your spaces where you have presence, you reduce them down to being explorers, and then you victimize them until they die, generating fear when you remove them. I love Lure, and I'm going to put Lure probably in top of the B tier. For some reason, I get how to play Lure. I'm really good at Lure. I have a good time playing Lure, even though there's sort of the inverse of Ocean's Hungry Grass, where Ocean's like, come to the oceans, we'll drown you. Lure's like, come to the inlands and we'll eat you. And yet, I play this one that much better and have that much more fun playing Lure. Its starter cards are really interesting. Softly Beckett Ever Inward is one of the strongest pull cards in the game, and it does cost 2 energy, but allows you to pull a ton of things into one space. Then you got Perils of the Deepest Island, which is another way to add Badlands, and then Swallowed by the Wilderness, that does damage based on those tokens again. So this combined with Never Heard From Again can do crazy amounts of damage over a turn. Lure is a really cool spirit, and it has this unique niche as well of being locked into the center of the island. It's also just got this interesting gameplay loop of reducing everything down to explorers and then destroying them bit by bit. And you can end up at various points of the game of having like 9, 10, or 11 explorers sitting in one region just waiting to be eaten. So yeah, Lure is a ton of fun, they're very good, and they're good against a whole bunch of the different invaders as well. And personally, one of my favorite depictions of any of the spirits in the game, in terms of its art and how it's presented. It's a big scary anglerfish sitting in the middle of the island. I haven't yet played with its aspect, but that does look quite interesting as well. It's one of the ones that gives the spirit an incarna and allows Lure to actually manifest on the island, and that's pretty neat. Something I'm looking forward to trying out. Next up we have Grinning Trickster Stirs Up Trouble. This is both Stephanie's favourite spirit and one of my best friend Dan's favourite spirits as well. They both love this guy. What does he do? Well, he's got very straightforward growth options, but again he's got that cost to reclaim cards thing that sometimes trips people up. Presence tracks are pretty average. It is nice to have an any elemental marker in there. They are presence tracks that definitely lean towards using more minor powers than major powers, but that also fits with the spirit's sort of feeling and vibe. Its special rules are where one of your powers adds discord to a land, you may pay 1 energy to add an extra one within one of that land. That's really, really strong. And weirdly, doesn't like cleaning up blight, so every time you remove blight, destroy one of your presents. Its innate powers are fascinating. Let's see what happens, also known in our group as Fuck Around and Find Out. This power lets you pick a land, flick over minor power, and just resolve it in that land. It's random chaos. Sometimes it's amazing and it goes perfectly and you get the exact thing you want. Other times, crazy stuff happens, blight pops up. It's a lot of fun regardless. The second ability, Why Don't You and Them Fight, allows you to add more strife and get Dahan and invaders fighting each other, as well as animals involved. It's a good way to do quite a bit of damage. Trickster also has possibly the most fun starter cards in the game. Impersonate Authority lets you add some strife, and as we've seen, you can add additional strife through your other powers. Cause one invader with strife to deal damage to other invaders. Here you can use a strife-ridden city to do 3 damage, which is pretty damn good for 1 power. And then finally, you have possibly the 2 best named cards in the whole game. Over-enthusiastic Arson and Unexpected Tigers. I'm going to put Grinning Trickster at the top of the B tier. I was going to think lower A tier. They're really good. They're like a remarkably fun spirit to play. The number of times that you fuck about and find out power works really well is staggering. It's just remarkable that you can just pull something out of the minor power deck and it just helps. It's just that extra card play. They're also very focused on strife and the ability to use that strife to cause damage, which is great. It means they're quite capable of dealing with places that have cities, which is a weakness of an awful lot of other spirits. And yeah, overall, they just appear to do very well in every game I've played. They're not a top tier, world-breaking sort of spirit, but they always carry their load. They always just pull out a couple of little miracle plays every game that just turn the tide. They're a lot of fun as well, and this is another spirit I'd recommend for people who are just starting out, because they'll fuck about and find out, let's see what happens power, where you just flick over minor cards. You get to explore that deck, you get to do random things, and if it doesn't go your way, well, you know, you're just along for the ride. Next up we have Stone's Unyielding Defiance. The big rock boy. Where Vital Strength of the Earth represents Earth, Stone's Unyielding Defiance represents Stone. We have some very unusual growth tracks here. Gaining elemental markers is kind of interesting. The presence tracks are also very odd. with the top track being both power and card plays, and your bottom track actually representing mostly elements. It's a very unusual layout, and I don't think there's any other spirits that do this, where they put the card plays and power on the top track, and then something completely different on the bottom track. What makes Stone's Unyielding Defiance, though, is this special rule. When Blight is added to one of your lands, unless the Blight outnumbers your presence, it does not cascade or destroy presence, yours or others. And its innate powers. When Blight is added to one of your lands, you may pay 2 energy to take it from the box instead of the Blight card. That's a really big deal. And their final ability, and this is what makes Stone Unyielding Defiance incredibly good against higher level invaders, is after damage is done to a land, Stone's Unyielding Defiance deals the damage back. So they take the Blight on the chin and then they punch back. Their starting cards are all about adding Badlands markers, defense, and damaging towns and cities. Alrighty, Stone's Unyielding Defiance is possibly the strongest spirit in the game. I'm going to put them a little ahead of Spread of Rampant Green because they can tank anything. They can go up against the toughest invaders and just take the hits on the chin and just punch back and wipe those invaders out. If anything, they kind of suck in lower complexity games or lower difficulty games. You just don't need their abilities. But when the invaders are throwing out big stacks and are doing heaps of damage, Stone's Unyielding Defiance is the spirit that is most capable of stepping up to those higher challenges. It's just an absolute beastly tank of a spirit that the harder the game gets, the better it gets. And yeah, I'd be hard pushed to find a spirit I would be more comfortable taking on tier 6, level 6 adversaries with than Stone. I think Stone is just a big, tough, scary rock monster. And yeah, again, we're looking back at Vital Strength of the Earth, and Vital Strength of the Earth is like, man, that's the kind of spirit I want to be. And just isn't. Stone is the ultimate tank. And yeah, S tier all the way. Absolutely one of my favorite spirits to play. I just love taking it on the chin and just pushing that damage back on the invaders. Yeah. If you want to win games, learn how to play Stone. Next up, we have Volcano Looming High. Volcano has interesting growth options, including a double growth option, and one that gives some extra card plays, presence, power card, and energy. A whole bunch of stuff on that one. Tracks are interesting. The bonus card plays are really spread out on the bottom track, and the top track's pretty consistent power, but there's a ton of elemental markers in here. Some huge weaknesses though, you can only place your presence in mountains. There's only one type of turret land that you can base yourself in, and that's mountains. And when one of your presences is destroyed in a land, you deal 1 damage per destroyed presence to both invaders and to harm. And because you're limited to mountains, your power cards get extra range if you have a big stack of influence in one mountain. So what are you going to do with Volcano Looming High? Well, you're going to build up big stacks of presence in one area. And the reason for that is their innates. The first innate has so big thresholds and you have to blow up your presence. But when you blow up that presence, you're doing a bucket load of damage to nearby invaders. And then your second ability allows you to get back your destroyed presence and to move your presence around. Your starter cards that you put down some Badlands do a fair bit of damage and push invaders and towns around. So when I first played Volcano Looming High, I didn't do a very good job with them. I thought they were all about building up this big stack and then like doing a doom explosion where you spend 10 of your presence to do a hideous amount of damage to a region. And I found as I've played, that's not really how the spirit works, or at least not how it works for me. I'm going to put them in the B tier. I'm going to put them about here. And what I do with them these days is I tend to do a lot more smaller explosions to disrupt builds earlier in the game. So when someone explores and they're just about to build, I do like a 2-point explosion to get rid of those explorers. And then I try to get up enough card plays that I can start bringing some of that presence back on board and then using actual cards to defeat the invaders instead of just building up this big stack and blowing it all, which didn't seem to work very well for me. The fact that at any turn you've got on tap 2 or 3 damage you can just throw out to any region on your board is not nothing. Yeah, it's going to cost you some of your presence, but you are still sort of building up in 1, maybe 2 regions. And you do have the tools to recover that presence later on in the game. So yeah, I find they play best when instead of building up a big stack, you consistently use your influence to do a little bit of damage to interrupt builds primarily. To stop an explorer becoming a town, you just knock out that explorer. Or to stop ravages just before they happen by knocking out the township and getting some fear. Either way, it's just using a couple of presence a turn in this fast attack because you've got the tools to get that presence back. So yeah, initially I thought they were really boring one-note spirit, but they've grown on me as I've played. I still don't think they're fantastic, but they are still pretty good. Next up we have Vengeance as a Burning Plague. Vengeance has some interesting growth options, especially if it's double presence placement in a place with town, city, or blight. And this is part of the theme of Vengeance as a Burning Plague, is getting into blighted and diseased areas. You've got a very short top presence track and quite a long card track. These are not great presence tracks, but at least you've got a double presence placement so you can uncover these things and move up quickly. Its special rules: when disease would prevent a build on a board with one of your presence, you may let the build happen and do not remove the disease. And whenever any of your presence is destroyed by anything other than a spirit action, add one disease. And your actions treat blight as though it's Badlands, so you do extra damage in areas of blight. And on that, your first innate power is about doing damage in areas with disease. You want to be piling in those disease tokens in an area and really hammering it. And your other ability is also damage, and it's damage against towns and cities. Potentially, if you get to the top tier, being able to destroy 2 cities in one hit. Your cards are about putting disease down and generating fear, and you've got this very important card here, which allows you to skip invader actions in one area that's diseased. I'm going to put Vengeance in the D tier. This is a spirit I like playing. I think they're really cool. I love the design space, but a bit like Wildfire, I tend to fly too close to the sun with them, stuff up, lose all my presence, and die horribly. I think they are the spirit I've lost the second most games playing as Vengeance as a Burning Plague. I'm not very good with them. I understand how they work, I'm just not very good at making them work. I think they could be a top tier spirit. I think they could be super, super strong if you're more comfortable with the risk that's required playing them. But for me, I find that, like Wildfire, I go too far. I get too invested in putting down disease tokens and not stopping the invader, and then all of a sudden, like, the island's blighted and I've lost. Very cool idea though, very neat thematic spirit, just not one I'm particularly good with. Next up we have Shroud of Silent Mist. Shroud has some great growth options, including a double presence placement, and has lots of ways of gaining extra power cards. Its presence tracks, on the other hand, are kind of awful. The top one has very little power on it, and the bottom one has a ton of card plays on it once you get deep enough. But there's a long period of playing with Shroud where you've really only got 1 power and 2 card plays. Now your special powers: once per turn, you gain a power card. Without fire, you do gain an energy. So that does help a little. But the cool thing about Shroud is miss, shift, and flow. When you go to play a card, you can move one of your presence. So your presence is constantly flowing and ebbing around the board into different places. Invaders and Dahan in your lands also don't repair damage. So you can slowly whittle a city away, just doing 1 damage a turn to it. On the 3rd turn, it blows up. And here's where you generate a lot of your fear. You have these like fear farms of places where you've got presence and damaged invaders, and you just get 1 extra fear for each of these, as well as some extra energy if you manage to get 3 or more of them. Your innate abilities are pretty straightforward. The first one is doing damage to an area you have presence, and the second one is pushing around Dahan and explorers. Your cards are a mix of pushing people around, doing damage to invaders, and generating fear. Oh, Shroud of Silent Mist. I'm putting you at the bottom of the D tier. I'm terrible with Shroud. This is another one of the spirits where I play like Icarus. I try to do too much and I get my presence wiped off the board, but the play loop of playing Shroud is really fun. The ability to move your presence before you take an action just opens up a world of possibilities for Shroud. And building up these little fair farms, so you're generating fair points each turn from them and getting a little bit of extra energy and eventually noodling them away. What I'm not great at is the timing of when to clear these up, and the number of times I've not had the damage I needed to sort of get rid of these fair farms before they just blight the land, and that's come back to bite me on the arse a fair bit. I think Shroud could potentially be, again, another fantastic high-level spirit, but not in my hands. In my hands, they are a liability because I'm liable to make too many fair farms to try and ratchet up that fair score, and in the end, those lands are going to get blighted because I don't defend them well enough. Still, really cool idea, really neat thematic theme of this evil fog spreading across the island, giving people the willies. Neat spirit. I love how it's designed. I just wish I could pilot it better. I'm going to put it above Vital Strength of the Earth. It is definitely better than Vital Strength of the Earth. Again, just needs a better pilot than me. Next up we have Starlight Seeks Its Form, which is a very difficult spirit to explain because it is a build your own spirit. It has completely unique presence tracks. And as you use these presence tracks, you lock and unlock different abilities. It also has a ton of innate abilities. And these innate abilities all have relatively low thresholds. Your growth tracks have plenty of spaces where you can place an element down, and you can choose that element when that happens. And that becomes a permanent part of your infrastructure. Your starting cards are interesting because they're mostly about getting you extra powers. You also have this fascinating Piece of the Nighttime Sky, which stops invaders from ravaging, but only if the terror level is at 1. So that's a card you want to forget at some point because it's going to become useless. You also have Gather the Scattered Lights of Stars, which can be quite important because depending on how you build your spirit, you have some really poor reclaim abilities. You have one option on your board to reclaim cards, but you might not necessarily pick that one until halfway through the game, or might not even pick it at all. Starlight Seeks Its Form is a hard spirit to describe how good it is and how bad it is. What I have seen though is when it's played well, it is very good, and I'm going to put it in the A tier. I've played some games with Starlight where I've done extremely well, and it's got this amazing flexibility to sort of become the thing you need it to be. I might put it a bit further down in that tier, just because I'm not 100% comfortable with using it. This is a spirit I think has one of the highest ceilings in the game. I think in the hands of a skilled player, it's probably an S tier spirit. For me, I'm still learning how to play it. I've played it probably a dozen times now, but it still feels like a new experience to me. It's just a spirit I'm not 100% comfortable with, but I have done very well with it. So I think there's definitely something there. And yeah, just what a great idea. A build your own spirit. It can become whatever you want to be. If you want it to be a defensive spirit, you just build along those ways. That's the sort of powers you get. I think this is a incredibly clever design. Probably one of the smartest designs in all of Spirit Island. And that's saying something. Probably better than I've been playing it. But I'm still going to put it at the bottom of the A tier. And then we get to the final spirit from Jagged Earth. And that is Fractured Days Split the Sky. This is going to be a hard one to explain. Fractured Days Split the Sky is weird. It has these unusual growth options where you gain time, and time is something you can spend on your cards. It's a lot to go into. You have these very simple growth tracks that only go up to 3 presence and 3 card plays, and that looks really weak, but trust me, it isn't. I'm not sure going through the board on the spirit will particularly help, but here we go. You can gain time, which is represented by putting presence onto this board. And you pull that from your presence tracks, so you can uncover your presence tracks very quickly. But you have some other effects that spend time, and that means stuff goes back onto your presence tracks, so you're constantly ebbing and flowing in power. Your innate power lets you or another spirit resolve a slow power fast, reclaim a power card from the discard pile, or play an additional power card paying its cost. And the second power allows you to look at different decks and mess about with them. You also have this giant pile of extra power cards, which is 4 minor and 4 major powers, set up in the sort of sideboard that you can access. And your starting power cards are incredibly strong. One allows you to mess with the Invader deck and change cards around there, and you can remove a target land from the game, just temporarily. So yeah, that's probably none of that made any sense because this is the hardest spirit in the game to explain to anyone how it works. What I will say is it's busted good. It is an extremely strong spirit. Some of the stuff you do with time is just absolutely game-breaking. I'm going to put it in the S tier. I think it could be top of the S tier if I could pilot it a little better, but what limited amount of plays I have had on Fractured Days, it's really strong. You can start the game and almost immediately feel like you're in the mid-game, and you're constantly in the mid-game. And this is a game where you ratchet up, where you have an early game where you're quite weak, a mid-game where you're starting to dominate, and an end game where you're just super tough, and it's just a matter of whether the invaders are entrenched enough that you can't destroy them. Fractured Days Split the Sky goes straight to the mid-game and kind of stays there. It's good almost immediately and can do game-shattering things almost immediately. Not much more to say on Fractured Days, aside from it is a very complex spirit. It's bloody hard to explain, but it's also busted good. Next up is Downpour Drenches the World. Got some fascinating growth options here, including a double presence one that gains you 2 water tokens, but you have to discard power cards. You have these fantastic presence tracks. The top one has virtually no power, but it has all these elemental icons. And the bottom one has very few card plays, but it does allow you to move your presence a bunch. very unusual tracks. It changes any location you have a sacred site to count as a wetlands. And for every 2 water you have, you may either gain 1 energy or repeat one of your land targeting powers. And this is the key thing about Downpour Drenches the World, is you can play the same card to multiple different places. Or you can play the same card to the same place multiple times. So if you've got a card that says defend 5 on it, you can defend 5 in this place, and that place, and that place, and that place, if you have enough blue energy, water energy to power that, and enough energy to pay for the card. 0 cost cards are great with Downpour. Your innate powers. One of them grants defend and reduces the hard counterattack, and the second power lets you gain energy and remove blight. Your starting cards are all super cheap. And you got some defense ability in there, so ability to isolate a land, and ability to do some damage. I absolutely love Downpour. I'm putting Downpour up in the S tier. Probably could go in the A tier, but for me, I just dig Downpour's playstyle. It's the firefighter. It can be everywhere all at once, and it can just do so much work. It's all about minor powers and getting those 0 cost and maybe 1 cost cards and just hammering them all over the place. Holding up the invaders so that the tougher, nastier spirits can just, grow to the size they need to deal to them. Downpour's not the kind of spirit that throws out tons and tons and tons of damage and wins the day by itself. It's a little bit like Spread of Rampant Green. It's an excellent support spirit. It's a spirit whose presence on the board makes everyone else's game easier. Yeah, it's not a dramatic wham bam bam thank you ma'am kind of spirit, but boy, does Downpour do a ton of work and absolutely belongs in my S tier. And if it was just about fun of playing spirits, this might be my top spirit. It's pretty close to it. It'd be Downpour and Thunderspeaker and maybe 1 or 2 others, but absolutely love playing Downpour. Next up is Finder of Paths Unseen. Straight away you'll see some wacky growth options and presence tracks. Now, one of the quirks here is you can remove these presence markers in sort of back and forth kind of way. So you can pop along, move back, and pick up different things. And this allows you to build the spirit in different ways. You can choose to go along the top and get more energy and focus more on sort of major powers, or you can go along the bottom and become more of a minor power spirit. Finder has a massive weakness, and that's after any one of your actions destroys 1 or more Dahan or invaders, or directly triggers their destruction by moving them, you destroy 1 of your presence and lose 1 energy. This means you can't just chip away at the enemy because you're going to lose your presence. If you are going to do something destructive, it has to be big and dramatic. Its defining power, though, is Open the Ways, and this allows you to make 2 of your lands adjacent during an action. Now, these lands could be on different boards. They could be completely opposite side, and you can make these 2 lands adjacent for an effect. That means you can push things all the way to the other side of the board and do other weird and amazing dramatic actions. Your innate powers allow you to push invaders, Dahan, presence, and beasts around, and your second power allows you to isolate potentially 3 lands a turn. You start off with 6 power cards, which is pretty damn cool, and almost all of them are around pushing things around the board and positioning. So Finder of Paths Unseen is the ultimate control spirit. They have more tools in their toolbox to manipulate the board and move things around and just dramatically change the shape of the board by using that ability to make 2 spaces adjacent. I think they are A tier. I think they're a very strong character, a strong spirit. I'm not particularly good at piloting them, but they're a spirit I want to get better at. They're a spirit that I think that I am still some distance away from reaching the skill ceiling of being a good Finder player. I want to get better at them. I feel like they could definitely be in the S tier in the right hands because they have so many tools. But they also have that big glaring weakness, so they do need someone else to come along and do a bit of their heavy hitting for them. But still, in terms of spirits that are going to challenge you mentally and make the game interesting and intriguing for you and provide you a sort of puzzle you won't have anywhere else, Finder is amazing. Just that one ability of being able to make 2 lands adjacent just changes the game in unfathomable and unusual ways. And you can't really describe playing Finder until you're actually sitting down and looking at all those options of how you can isolate this land and then make those 2 lands adjacent, and all the stuff you can do to really just make the invaders have an absolute mare of a time on the island. The fact that you can't give them that much biff because you're going to lose presence each time you do some damage is a real weakness, but it's a weakness you have to work around. Great team player, excellent spirit, just one I think I need a lot more work on getting good at. Alrighty, now we're moving into Horizons of Spirit Island, starting off with Eyes Watch from the Trees. We've got some really good growth options here and another double presence placement. We've got some really great presence tracks here that go up to 4 power and 4 card plays, with a smattering of elements in them as well. Special rule is Dahan Trust the Watchers. After one of your powers adds defense to a single land, gather up to 1 Dahan into that land. And their core ability is creating fear and defending, putting up some pretty big defense numbers too. Your starting cards that you gather Dahan, defend in lands, generate fear and do a little bit of damage. Eyes Watch from the Trees, I'm going to put them in the B tier. Real solid B tier. It's probably, in the middle of the B tier. Absolutely dependable spirit, really straightforward. Has an incredibly simple playstyle that is very strong, and that is you defend hard in lands that are getting ravaged, and you bring in Dahan to do the counterattacks. Real straightforward, real simple, but very, very strong. Not exactly the most interesting spirit to play because they are pretty one note, but that note is a very strong one. It's, I'm going to defend 8 here, bring in 4 Dahan, and beat the hell out of the invaders. So yeah, they are a low complexity spirit, and they're a spirit where you can feel like you've got to their skill cap very, very quickly. But hey, defending hard and counterattacking with Dahan is a really strong strategy, and they do it about as well as anyone. Next up, we have Fathomless Mud of the Swamp. Another very straightforward spirit with some dependable growth options, including a double growth option and one where you gain energy and power cards. These power tracks are very similar to Eyes Watch from the Trees, where you've got 5 power up top, 4 card plays at the bottom, and a smattering of elements. Your special rule is Offer No Firm Foundations. At your sacred sites, build actions add explorers instead of towns and cities. Spreading in Dreadful Mire lets you move one of your presence, lets you do damage, and push Dahan around. Your starting cards let you push explorers, generate fear, defend, and gather Dahan. Fathomless Mud of the Swamp is okay. I'm going to put them down here. Their ability to stop builds is pretty damn good though. If you can get in the right place at the right time and you're lucky with how the invader cards come out and you can stop some very early builds, they can get amazing momentum early in the game. If they don't go your way and you end up out of position and not in the right place to stop those builds, now you don't necessarily have a particularly big toolkit to stop the game from spiraling out of your control. Your special ability, stopping those builds, is really important. Still, I feel like for a low complexity spirit, this is a relatively easy one to stuff up with. But your innate does allow you to push your presence around the board a little and build up those sacred sites when you need them. Fathomless Mud is a good, dependable, solid control spirit with a really neat ability to stop builds, but not necessarily much else. Moving right along, we have Rising Heat of Stone and Sand. Rising Heat is very strong, placing its presence in sand and mountains. It gets a growth option where it can place 2 of those down. If you're placing anywhere else, you can only add 1 presence. Very long presence tracks that go up to 5 and 5, with a smattering of elements in there as well. Its special rule is very important. At your sacred sites, invaders have -1 health to a minimum of 1. That means towns have 1 health and cities have 2. And your innate power is to do damage to a land. And while it's really easy to get the first tier of that, it does take a little while to get into the second tier because of how your tracks are built. Here are your starting cards, and probably the interesting one is Stinging Sandstorm, which allows you to move one of your presence, doing some damage, and then if you've created a sacred site, it immediately brings a special rule into play. So this is a nice way to remove a town. Sweltering Exhaustion is another important card because it allows you to skip a ravage or build action, and that can be very important. Rising Heat of Stone and Sand is very much a one-note pony. And I'm going to put this one-note pony in the D category, just in here. It's fine. It's not the greatest spirit by any means. It can potentially be quite cool. If you can channel things and get some pushes and other abilities to move everything into your sacred site areas and just do the damage to get rid of things. There's a really great card that allows you to do 1 damage to each town and city, and that's huge if you can get something that does that. Because ultimately you want to be piling things out of wetlands and forests into mountains and sands where you've got these sacred sites and doing the damage there. The problem is, Rising Heat of Stone and Sand doesn't come with a lot of pushing abilities itself. It's got the damage abilities, it's got the ability to reduce the invader's health, but it doesn't necessarily have those abilities. You're going to have to go fishing for them. But if you do get that working, it's a pretty good combination. It's just not exactly the most amazing one, and it is one that I feel that if you're up against a high-level invader who's pushing the tempo of the game, you're probably going to have the game go away from you before you can get these, kill zones set up and the ability to do enough pushes to get things corralled to do the damage to get rid of them. So yeah, I'm going to put this guy in the D tier. He's not terrible. He's quite good at low difficulty games, and he's very simple to play. But I just feel that he doesn't have a lot in his toolbox aside from this one trick of reducing health and doing a ton of damage. Next up we have Devouring Teeth, Lurk, Underfoot. We have a very slow growth track here with only one add presence on every single one of the growth options. And these are long tracks. Well, the power track does go all the way up to 7. The plays track only goes to 4, and that is a lot of work to get down there. You're mostly going to be stuck on 2 plays for most of the game. You have a really straightforward special rule where your damage dealing powers do +1 damage. That's quite neat. And your innate power is to do a ton of damage in a location. If you can somehow get to that top tier, which is very unlikely, you're doing 8 damage and 2 fear, which is quite impressive. Your starting cards have some damage abilities, some defense, some gathering, and some fear. And 2 cards that really stand out are Marked Territories with Scar and Teeth. This is a Defend 9. That is a high defense card, one of the highest in the game. And then there's Gift of Furious Might, which you can target another spirit and they get to do +3 damage when dealing a damage dealing power. That's massive when you're dealing with a spirit who might be dealing 1 damage to each town in an area. In which case, you give them a +3 and that 1 damage to each town in an area becomes 3 wiped out towns. That can be a real game changer. But the fact is, Devouring Teeth, Lurk, Underfoot is pretty ordinary. The slow growth rate, the long tracks, it takes forever to get anywhere. The extra damage is nice and all, but that is all you've got. You've literally got this tiny bit of damage, mostly in your areas that you're actually built in or to the adjacent to where you've got presence. You don't have a lot of reach. So you've got slow growth, you've got ordinary power tracks, not a lot of card plays, and a bit of damage. I kind of recommend going for major powers with this guy. Then you're only getting +1 damage on a big power that's costing you like 3 or 4 or 5 energy. So yeah, a little bit disappointed with Devouring Teeth, Lurk, Underfoot. I think easily the weakest spirit in Horizons of Spirit Island, and probably the worst of the low complexity spirits. I'm only putting him above Heart of the Wildfire because I suck that badly with Heart of the Wildfire. While I don't exactly have an amazing winning record with Devouring Teeth, it is better than I do have with Wildfire. So that is its one saving grace. The last spirit from Horizons is Sunbright Whirlwind. Sunbright Whirlwind has very straightforward and simple growth options, but some neat stuff on there, including the ability to add presence at 4 distance away and another growth option that gives you +4 energy. Even with limited growth options, you actually have quite short tracks, and they're pretty good. You can get up to 5 card plays and 6 power, as well as a bunch of elements. You're probably going to want to aim around the 3 plays and 3 power mark, but I feel this is a spirit that you can do mages or minors with. Its special ability is when you add your presence during growth, you may push up to 1 explorer or Dahan from that land, and your innate power is a whole bunch of pushes. Once you tune that power up though, it does a whole bunch of damage, and you can potentially do 3 damage in the land you're pushing to and 4 damage in the land you pushed from. When you look at your starting cards, you have this interesting thing where Scatter to the Winds chooses up to 5 different targets and pushes them to as many different lands as possible. And Tempest and Leaves and Branches does damage to 5 different invaders in a target land. This feels like it should be some kind of powerful interaction, but I don't really see it. What I do see though is a spirit I'm going to put in the top of the B category. Yeah, I'll put it about here. Because Sunbright Whirlwind just proves to be a remarkably useful spirit. Being able to push things during the growth phase is amazing, especially as you have the ability to add presence up to 4 away from where you currently have it. So you can just negate a whole bunch of explorers. The invaders start exploring the island, you put your presence and knock them back to another spot. That doesn't seem like much, but over the course of the game that makes a massive difference. If a land only has 1 explorer in it and you boot them out, you're stopping a later turn build and a later turn ravage. It's a really big deal. And that positioning and maneuvering just buys Sunbright Whirlwind the time it needs to get up its power level to start striking back. It's a great spirit just for stopping the invaders in their tracks and reducing their momentum. And it's my pick for the strongest spirit and best spirit to play from Horizons of Spirit Island. And now we're on to Nature Incarnate, the final expansion. And I should say that while I purchased a lot of the earlier stuff for Spirit Island, I did receive a review copy of Horizons of Spirit Island and Nature Incarnate from Greater Than Games. So yeah, the last 13 or so spirits, those are the ones that have been provided to me by the publisher. Everything else I bought myself. So let's start off the review of Nature Incarnate with Ember-Eyed Behemoth. Ember-Eyed Behemoth has very straightforward growth, aside from it has an Incarna. Now, Incarnas are tokens that get placed on the board, and they sort of represent a physical manifestation of the spirit, and they can move them around and do different things with them. Sort of like a focal point for a spirit, or an avatar of it. You have some really nice growth options, with a double growth option, and one that gives you power cards and energy. And once per game, you can take a growth action to empower your Incarna. Your presence tracks are really nice, with steady progress and a whole bunch of elements up the top, and really only the second card space, which gives you a 2, being a dead space on the bottom track. Your special rule is that your Incarna moves around the island, and once per turn you can push it to an adjacent space or move it to one of your sacred sites. Your innate power is that your Incarna does a whole bunch of damage at the location it's at. It just goes stomp, stomp, stompy, stomp, stomp, stomp. Your starting cards are pretty damn good, with one adding Badlands and doing damage, and one that stops 2 invaders from participating in Ravages. That card in particular can be really good at stopping, say, 2 cities or a city in a town from participating in a Ravage. Ember-Eyed Behemoth is a big stompy boy, and I love playing my big stompy boy. I'm going to put him right in the middle of the A tier. I might not necessarily be that strong, but there is something really satisfying about walking around the island as this behemoth and just stomping things until they stop moving. Once you empower your Incarna, you can use your innate ability twice, so you can stomp the hell out of one location, then move to the next, or teleport to a sacred site, and stomp again. Or you can just stomp twice in the same place, making sure things stay really, really stomped. Ember-Eyed Behemoth, you've got all your card plays and all that kind of stuff, that's great, but mostly you're really just looking for the elements to power up your stomping action. You just want to be moving your behemoth around, shoving it into the places with the invaders, and just eating them alive. Love this spirit. I think Ember-Eyed Behemoth is a ton of fun to play, and just there's a power fantasy about being the embodied mountain walking around the island, just smashing things. Really neat spirit, lots of fun. The second spirit we have is Hearth Vigil. Hearth Vigil has some very basic growth options, but you get to add a presence each turn. Your growth tracks are pretty straightforward, going up to 5 power with 3 elements, or 4 card plays, and you do have this little extra bonus action at the front, which is to gather 1 Dahan into your lands. It's a spirit that's comfortable playing both major and minor powers. Its special rules: Blight added to your lands does not destroy your presence if Dahan are present, and Dahan have +4 health each while in your lands. Events and Blight cards don't damage, destroy, or replace Dahan in your lands. And when all Dahan leave one of your lands, you may move your presence with them. This all makes for a whole bunch of indestructible super soldier Dahan that are practically impossible for the invaders to kill. Your innate powers: Warn of impending conflict. This allows your Dahan to attack before the invaders. And if you've played this game at all, you know that's absolutely devastating. The second ability, Keep Watch for New Incursions, allows you to gather and move Dahan around, also doing damage. Potentially a lot of damage. Your starting cards give you a lot of fear and a little bit of damage, as well as some ability to move Dahan and invaders around. Hearth Vigil is possibly busted. Incredibly strong. The old traditional, get the defense up high, bring in the Dahan, and, counterattack to win works remarkably well with Hearth Vigil. Having Dahan have 6 health each is very silly. It's very, very strong. Spirit goes straight to the S tier. Yeah, and every time I've seen the Spirit played, it's been pretty one-sided kind of affair. I think they're another Spirit that could potentially be a top tier Spirit for taking on level 6 adversaries. I think having almost unkillable Dahan is such a strong thing. And again, it's that defend, counterattack playstyle that works really, really well, and Hearth Vigil just does it so damned well. Very, very strong. Potentially stolen a little bit of thunder from Thunderspeaker in terms of becoming the best Dahan influencing spirit. Next we have Towering Roots of the Jungle. Towering Roots has these interesting growth options that allow you to add vitality at your Incarna. We'll talk more about vitality in a second. Your growth tracks lend you towards major powers, as your top track goes up to 6 power, and your bottom track does take a while to get you onto 3 cards. There's also some good elemental markers on the way. Your main thing though are your vitality tokens, and some of your actions and cards add vitality. What vitality does is it prevents blight from being placed. So if you have a vitality token in an unblighted land and blight gets placed there, you remove the vitality token instead. Then you have your Incarna. Invaders, Dahan, and beasts can't be damaged or destroyed at the Incarna, and you skip all build actions at the empowered Incarna. And you empower it the first time by having 3 of those vitality tokens in one region. Your special abilities allow you to gather people into one region, using Shelter under towering branches, and Revoke Sanctuary and Cast Out allows you to remove invaders from the board. Now, your special rule says you can't damage or destroy them, but you can remove them. Your starting cards are an interesting mix. You have another way of getting vitality into play, a very strong defense card, a card that allows you to remove invaders, not destroy or damage them, and a card that allows spirits to regain lost presence. Stopping blight spreading is a really big thing in this game, and Towering Roots of the Jungle is the best at stopping blight. And on that, I'm going to put them in the A tier. I'm going to put them probably towards the top of the A tier. But the ability to stop blight in its tracks using these vitality tokens, it's not nothing to sneeze at. Towering Roots does seem to revolve around one simple trick, which is find a land, pull everything into that land, use your vitality tokens to stop it from blighting, and the invaders can't do any damage to anything in there. So you just form this giant holding cell. Then once you're sufficiently powered up, you might move your encounter away and just blow up that area. Just throw lots and lots of major powers into it until everything inside it is dead. At the very least, you can slow down the invaders and corral them into one spot. You can use your vitality to stop the island from blighting. And if you're a defensively minded player, I reckon this would be a very strong pick for you. As for me, I think they're one of the strongest spirits in the game because they just shut down so much of what the invader needs to do to win. Next up, we have Relentless Gaze of the Sun. Relentless Gaze of the Sun will always add one presence. Your Reclaim Cards ability allows you to recover a lot of destroyed presence as well. And that really encourages you to get your presence into places where it's possibly going to get blown up. You also have this fascinating option of moving 3 presence together and gaining energy an additional time, doubling your amount of energy. Looking at your presence tracks, your top track is fascinating. Lots of power and a whole bunch of symbols. Your card play track is very slow, however. But that's okay, because of how Relentless Gaze of the Sun works. Its special rule, Relentless Punishment. If you have 3 presence in one area, you can repeat a power on that area. It's a little bit like Downpour Drenches the world, but it's very much focused on just the one territory. Wherever you have 3 presence, you just repeat powers. Each time you repeat that power, it costs you an extra energy to do. But that's okay. Cards that might have only done 1 or 2 damage, now you can make them do 4 or 6 damage. As long as you've got the energy to pay for it, you can keep recasting the same card over and over again. Your innate powers allow you to move your presence around the board and do a whole bunch of damage to invaders and the Dahan. This can also add blight. However, your secondary innate power means that when you would add blight, you can choose to destroy your presence instead, which is great because you've got an ability to bring your destroyed presence back. This power also allows you to do stuff so you don't end up destroying the Dahan. Unsurprisingly, your starting cards are all very cost effective. And looking at a card like Blinding Glare, you can see how the spirit works. So the first time you play this card, you might use it to skip the Ravage action, and then you can replay it to increase the fear, and do that again, and again, and again, as long as you can afford to pay the additional energy costs. I think Relentless Gaze of the Sun sits in the B tier. I think they're very, very strong. I think they've got this fascinating mono focus on one region where you just hammer that region until it's dealt with. But they've got flaws, and that big flaw is they kind of suck at dealing with lots of fires all over the place. Give them one big problem to solve, and Relentless Gaze of the Sun just fixates on it until that problem is solved. If the board's spiraling and getting a little bit out of control, things get a bit harder for Relentless Gaze of the Sun. Not sure how good they'll be against top-level invaders who keep adding in more and more and spreading wider and wider. I think if the invader's stacking things in 1 or 2 areas, they'll do really well, but if they're spreading wide, not so well. Still, a fascinating spirit. I do prefer Downpour's playstyle of being able to hit multiple different regions and be a firefighter that way, but I kind of like how Relentless Gaze of the Sun plays on that same thing but takes a different approach to it. It's very much like Lure and Ocean being the opposite of each other. Downpour and Gaze of the Sun feel like they're opposites and equals to each other. I just prefer the playstyle of Downpour. Next we have Wounded Waters Bleeding. Wounded Waters Bleeding is kind of unusual because it starts with a lot of presence on the board and a lot of power. But for its first 3 to 5 turns, it's wounded, and it needs to be healed up before it can get to its full strength. Let's look at how that works. Wounded Waters has very basic growth options. Either reclaim your cards or add a presence, and a very strange presence track. Because so much of your presence starts in play, you'll start with 0 energy and 1 card play. And you have to move quite a way to get to your second card play, so for those first few turns, you're going to be struggling a little. By turn 5 though, you should be on 3 power and 3 cards. Each turn you gain either a blue or a red element marker, and you'll add them to your healing marker spot. Then on the 3rd turn you'll gain 1 healing card, and on the 5th turn you'll gain another. And the card you pick is based on the elements you've chosen. And these change your innate powers. So a lot to explain here. Essentially what's printed on your board to start with goes away and is replaced with much better powers. These are your starting innate powers, with the left one allowing you to push about a whole bunch of things, while the right one does a little bit of damage and adds animals. Depending on whether you pick water or animals as you advance, these will get stronger. Your starting cards are pretty good. I especially like the one that allows you to add disease and an animal to the board. If you go down the beast path, Wounded Waters Bleeding can make very good use of beast tokens. Wounded Waters is a tricky spirit because it starts with a lot of presence and energy, but it's got very few card plays, and you're kind of handicapped for those first few turns until you get to a changeover point, in which case you become quite powerful and strong. I'm going to put them in the bottom tier of C. I think their early game's kind of dull. I think their final forms can be very, very good and very interesting, but it's a case of turn 5, turn 6, you normally have the game either won or you're getting close to winning by that point, or you should have reached a decisive point, and that's when Wounded Waters Bleeding comes on stream. All of their early game, where they're sort of weak and needing a bit of help, that's the bit where you really need a spirit to be doing its work and lifting its weight. And I'm not sure that Wounded Waters Bleeding does at that point. I talked about this earlier, about how spirits start in sort of an early phase and then go to a mid-game and then a late game. And I feel like Wounded Waters Bleeding has a very long early game before then flicking over to an end game. And I feel like the game's usually decided by the point it does. So, yeah, I don't think Wounded Waters Bleeding is terrible, but I don't think it adds as much to a group as other spirits, especially not other spirits from this expansion. Next up we have Wandering Voice Keen's Delirium. This is an Arcana spirit, and it has some pretty good growth tracks, with a spot that adds 2 presence and another one that adds a whole bunch of things, including an air element, which is a really big deal with this spirit. It's got long, pretty ordinary presence tracks. It's got this one interesting spot that allows you to push the Arcana at the end of this track, but you'll probably never get there. Its Arcana is placed on the board, and if it's empowered, it isolates its land, which is a really cool thing. When any actions move that Arcana to a land with invaders, you add 1 strife to the destination land. In lands adjacent to your Arcana, if strife is present, Dahan do not participate in Ravage. They're basically just removed from the equation. They don't strike, they don't fight, and they can't be targeted. And in Senseless Roaming, when your actions add strife to an invader or town, you may push it. Then you got your innate powers. The first one allows you to push your Arcana around. A lot, potentially. This is where that extra air element comes in handy. And remember that each time you push your Arcana, you're adding some strife. Your second ability is to do a bunch of fear, and then potentially a whole bunch of damage and destruction to invaders with strife. Your starting cards help you push your Arcana around, add more strife, and add fear. You also have a very handy card here that stops invaders with strife participating in Ravage. That means they don't get rid of their strife token. I think Wandering Voice Keen's Delirium is awesome fun. I'm going to put them up there with just in front of Many Minds, maybe just behind Many Minds. Similar kind of thing. Moving your presence around the board and creating all the strife and discord. It's a really neat play experience. They're just like this aggravating, buzzing bee that gets in everyone's faces and just slows the invaders down dramatically. They can put out a ton of strife, and then they can use that strife to cause the invaders to kill each other. Very, very cool. Also, empowering your Arcana and allowing it to isolate a region, that's just neat, and you can move that isolate around the board to wherever you need it. I may potentially have put this one too high in terms of its actual power level, but in terms of fun, it is top tier. The second to last spirit is Breath of Darkness Down Your Spine. This is another Arcana spirit, and has a special rule called the Endless Dark. Your growth options make the spirit a relatively slow grower, and they also have the additional cost of allowing things to escape from the Endless Dark. Now, the Endless Dark is one of your special rules, and it's a special location that kind of exists off the board, but as part of the board where you can keep things imprisoned. Your presence tracks go up to 5 power and 4 card plays, and one of the spaces on the track is how you empower your Arcana. Now, these are quite long tracks, and Breath of Darkness Down Your Spine has limited growth options, so you're probably not going to uncover them all during the game. What the encounter does is abduct people into the Endless Dark, and that keeps them out of play. Of course, as we showed in your growth options, things will eventually come back into play from the Endless Dark, but you control what and when. Your innate powers allow you to do damage at your Arcana and move your Arcana around, and you can keep doing this. Note that when you do damage to an invader, and they're the only invader left in a land, they get abducted into the Endless Dark instead of being destroyed. This means the Leave a Trail of Deathly Silence, you can potentially push your Arcana around and hoover up a whole bunch of explorers, stopping builds and later ravages. Your second power is Lost in the Endless Dark, which allows you to generate fear based on the invaders in the Endless Dark, and downgrade invaders. Downgrading means they get reduced to the next step down, so city becomes a town, town becomes an explorer, explorer disappears. Your starting cards revolve around your Arcana, and allow you to move around the island, generate fear, add strife, and abduct explorers. You also have this interesting card that allows you to abduct up to 2 presents from other spirits. The cool thing about this is you can use these as the cost you have to pay for your growth options. You can release other people's presents. It also allows them to move their presents around the board. I'm going to put them in the B tier, probably midway up the B tier. I haven't quite got them to click. I can see there's a lot of potential in this spirit. I can see there's a whole bunch you can do, moving around the board and hoovering up all those explorers and stopping them in its tracks. But I found when I've played it, I've just had to release everything from the Endless Dark entirely too early. I've never really built up like this massive pile of people in there. I just tend to sort of bleed them out far too quickly. So I'm not entirely too sure what I'm doing wrong, but I feel like there's a great deal of potential in this spirit, and they could be much, much higher up. Currently, this is where I'm sort of piloting them. I feel like I'm not quite using Abduct well enough to get enough things off the board to really make a difference. Still, what I have done to date has been good enough to put them in the sort of higher middle tier of spirits. Still, I suspect someone's going to tell me this is one of the strongest spirits in the game, and I'm just playing it wrong. And last, and certainly not least, is Dances Up Earthquakes. Before discussing growth, we should really look at their special rules. Whenever you would play a power card, you may instead pay any amount of energy onto the card to make it an impending card, setting aside out of play for use on a future turn. Now, a bunch of your energy options will allow you to put extra energy on these cards each turn, slowly paying them off and slowly bringing them into play. Your growth options are pretty slow, but you have this one significant one over here that allows you to add extra energy onto impending cards. Your growth tracks are quite long, and you do have these interesting spots that allow you to get extra plays for impending cards, as well as going up to 4 cards you can play on a single turn. So yeah, here we have a spirit that can potentially get 6 plays on a turn. You also have these Earthquake tokens, and Lands Creek with Tension allows you to add these tokens to a land if you have impending cards. It also allows you to increase your defense because of impending cards as well. The second ability triggers off a number of power cards you have in play. This doesn't count impending cards. If you have 3, 5, or 7 cards and all of those element markers, you can do a ton of damage to a target land that has one of these Earthquake markers on them. That's a crazy, crazy amount of damage. You also start with 6 cards, which have a variety of effects, including gaining extra energy, adding fear and Earthquake markers, pushing things around, and direct damage. Dances Up Earthquake is a very odd spirit in that you'll be having like a couple of mid-turns and then a one uber turn when all of your impending cards come out and you're trying to trigger off your special ability. But if you do get those all working, this spirit is absolutely really, really strong. I'm going to put them up in the top tier, and I'm probably going to put them just maybe here. They are definitely one of the strongest spirits I've played. The ability to bank cards away, and yeah, you've got to think through what you're going to be doing. You get energy added to each of those impending cards. So high cost cards, you just put them away, and it just takes time for them to come out. You can do so much more than most spirits because you have this like drip feed energy system. And yeah, you're not going to be playing, 2 or 3 cards, 3 cards a turn and doing effects with them. You are going to kind of be playing 2 cards and maybe 1 to deal with the current turn and banking some away. And then you're just going to have these big dramatic turns where you get all of your element markers and everything else coming in stream. You're going to absolutely devastate the region with your second right and 8, but then you're going to have all these other effects go off. If you can play the game and time things well, Dances Up Earthquakes is absolutely horrifically good. First game I played them, I was like, it took me a little while. Like the first cycle, I was like, oh, I don't quite get this. But by about turn 4, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay, I think on turn 6, I'm going to be destroying that city, that place. I'm just going to time it all. And then boop, boop, boop. All came off, and it was just like wham, 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 wham. Really satisfying spirit to play. And very, very strong. Well, holy hell, that took forever to record. And you might not know quite how long this is because I've cut out a whole bunch and I will edit this video down substantially. I also had a lot of big breaks in between. This was filmed in 3 separate segments over the course of a day. I hope you found this entertaining, fun, thought-provoking, and just, a good way to spend some time. And as I said at the start of the video, if you really want to dive into some deep Spirit Island lore, go check out Red Revenge's channel. That guy knows so much about Spirit Island. He's played every single Spirit a gazillion times and has guides and playthroughs and everything against every adversary you can imagine. So much stuff for Spirit Island. And as for you, let me know which Spirit you think I got completely and utterly wrong, or I've underrated, or I've overrated, or that, I'm just clearly barking up the wrong tree. Well, tell me what Spirit you think I should really give a second chance. That I should look at again and go with fresh eyes. Give me your perspective on them. And as always, 3 Minute Board Games does not do paid content. We occasionally get review copies for things, but we're entirely sponsored by YouTube ads and Patreon. So if you want to keep us independent and not just another ad channel, please come support us on Patreon. That'd be really appreciated. And until next time, take care. Like, subscribe, support the channel. Goodbye.